unless you have a GM, in which, baby, you cannot drive my car unless you're driving it to the recall center. And then if you drive it to the recall center, getting it fixed and back is a whole other thing. Jason Knowles from the I-Team on ABC7 did this story last night. And, Jason, it was remarkable how frustrated many of these GM customers are. I mean, you just talked to a handful of them, and it seems like this is really, really, really widespread.
Well, yeah, it's a huge problem. I think it's something a lot of people haven't thought of. At least I don't think this angle of the story has been done. I mean, obviously, the headline has been, of course, the tragedy and the deaths and the problems. And, of course, yesterday there were even more recalls. There was another 8.5 million, I believe, yesterday, the day the story aired, which was coincidental. But yeah, people are frustrated. They're waiting weeks and months to get in to the shop. And many of
these that have the ignition issue are secondarily being recalled for this other issue they recalled the 8.5 million for yesterday.
Well, and it's other cars as well, because we found out in our research that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they don't really release comprehensive studies, but there's a private company that we found called Stereocycle, and they work with some of the nits and numbers, and they did a study showing that in the first quarter of this year, there were 13 plus million recalls, auto-related recalls, and the same time last year there was only 4.5. So this is across the board, not only with GM, but with other autos as well. And a lot of times the problem is these computerized dashboards. Cars are, of course, newer and they're more high-tech, but there's more issues that are popping up.
Because the actual servers that are operating, they can get like anything. It gets a bug and it just wasn't properly coded to begin with.
Right.
And then after a period of time, it times out.
Right. And people are waiting for a long time for these parts. I mean, especially we found out more specifically with the GM ignition recall, and then there was another recall as well with a drive shaft on a Chevy Cruze too. And both consumers, of course, that we worked with, they were lucky that they called us and we were able to track down their problem and talk to a GM spokesperson, and they got their issues fixed. As for everyone else, they're still going to have to continue to wait, although GM says they are on track to have all of these parts ready for the October timeframe. Now that's after the
Now let's
summer.
talk about that. I noticed that in your piece last night, exactly. that Chevy is saying GM is saying don't necessarily bring the product in until we clear you to bring it in, because they do have this backlog, right? The dealers have this backlog because they don't have the replacement parts, and they're saying it will be – they don't anticipate this will all be fixed until October. That's what they've told the government that they were going to do.
Right.
And so they don't have – so people could be basically SOL, and they're being told not to drive their cars.
And the other question is, will that October time frame be extended now that there's been another announcement of millions and millions and millions of more cars? If I were a consumer, I would bring your car into the dealership no matter what, because it can be, obviously the ignition recall is a safety issue. Even if you don't think it is, bring it in. And if there's any safety problem or any safety concern at all, you should ask for a rental car. That was another issue in this story with the ignition recall. A gentleman told us he was not being offered a rental car, and he was told to just put the one key in the car and then it would be safe. GM says their studies show that is fine and you can drive the car like that. I'm telling you, I don't think I would do that if I
Wait, what are they telling you?
Just the one key, like don't have any, what do you mean?
Just put just the key, no key ring, no other keys, and it's safe. And they do say that is, they've done extensive testing and that people should be able to do that. But at the same time, they're also saying people can get a rental car and the dealership should give you a rental car. I would get a rental car.
I would too. I don't want to depend on a system that's so fragile if my Blackhawk Stanley Cup key ring is going to set it off whack, Jason,
right.
You know?
No key ring.
And you're so right. I mean, to me, it's like at the very least, you should be able to get a rental car because it's their problem. You bought the car in good faith. You can't drive it. They should be able to. They should have to provide you with an alternate vehicle.
Right, and The one gentleman in our story from Bartlett, he had the Chevy Cobalt. Not only did he have several recalls, he showed us records of recall after recall that he had on the vehicle, including the ignition. He had other problems. GM actually extended his warranty. He had so many problems with this car. It's been in the shop 30 times. So we finally called, and he finally got his parts for the ignition recall. He got his car fixed right away after we called. Well, after he got it fixed, and he found out his car is now affected by another recall.
Wow.
That power steering one. So he has to bring it back in the shop.
You're hearing people say, well, they should have let it go bankrupt. It would be that much worse if they did. Yeah. Trust me. It's bad as it is. But imagine if it had gone bankrupt, and then you'd have all these people who would have unsafe cars.
Right.
Yeah, and then what would they do? Yeah.
Right. At least now with the recalls, people are aware of this. They can get it fixed. I think there's still a big question mark out there as to how many people have been affected by this. I know that there have been reports saying at least 13 deaths and maybe more may come out of this. We don't know.
And that has to do with this key problem. It's an ignition problem, but the ignition problem deactivates the airbag is the issue, right?
Yeah, I believe there's two issues. It can deactivate the airbag, and it also is an issue with the power steering, and
you can lose power steering,
and you lose control of the car.
Right. If you're moving, it's a strange spectrum of speed at which you lose control too. Because if you're going fast enough, you're still maintaining that control. But if you're going, it's between like 30 and 50 miles an hour, where all of a sudden it becomes a little less manageable. And you can't, and you're not able. If you think you're going to make a turn, you can't actually make the turn. That's
right.
It's crazy. And
the best thing you can do, no matter what kind of car you own, obviously if you have a GM, you're going to do this. But even any other car owner, you can check websites. There's safercar.gov. You can check that with your VIN number and see if there's a recall that maybe you missed. You can even ask your mechanic to run your VIN just as a preventative measure to make sure that you didn't miss one, and because these recalls are going to start happening more and more.
Well, the GM, and you were talking about, especially with these glass screens in cars now, where the dashboard isn't dials and stuff; it's actually a screen. More and more cars are going to that. More and more manufacturers are going to that, and that means it's running off a central server, and there's problems there. But for people who are affected right now by these massive GM recalls, is there there's not only the dealership, but there's also a mechanic network, right, that they're being sent to?
Right. Well, most people, from what I believe and understand, the people I've talked to, they go directly to their dealerships. And the dealership will tell them, hey, it's going to be weeks or months. Now, I believe they should be offering consumers rental cars if they want it, and obviously if there's some kind of a safety issue.
Yeah. Because people don't want to just drive off the lot. Because once you drive off the lot, you've now assumed your own responsibility for that. I mean, not. Believe me, there'll be some very fine lawyers in the world who will be able to turn that back around. But this is still, it's potentially really, 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 really bad.
Well, right. One consumer we had talked to with the Cruise, he had a drive shaft recall. He said that he was told he could continue to drive it, but he said, no, I'm not going to risk it. And it had been, he said, sitting in the lot waiting for the part. But now that problem's going to be fixed for him too.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Jason Knowles, ABC7i team. Incredible story last night about how frustrated these GM owners are.
Oh, man, I feel for them. And the takeaway to me, though, was the idea that if you just use the one key, don't have like the little rabbit's foot on there or your home key, it might be okay. Just use the one. It was like in a Die Hard movie. Okay, just use the one key. Don't touch the red wire.
What?
I don't want to hear that.
And who has that? I carry an Acme anvil on the end of my keychain. That's why I never lose my keys. I always know where they are.